I hate this fucking bumper. Or at least I do right now, and before anybody lights me up in the comment section, hear me out for a moment. I spent days digging through YouTube trying to find one video that showed me what it took to install this thing. Just one, and I couldn't find it. There was nothing that showed the wiring, the hardware, the fitment problems, what parts I might need, nothing. That's the video I was looking for, so that's the video I made. So if you're thinking about buying an ADD Bomber bumper, I'm going to show you exactly what it took to get this thing on my Bronco. The good, the bad, the mistakes, the frustration, I'm going to show you all of that shit. Did I say I hate this fucking bumper? I'm John and this is Project Kehm. No sponsors, no discount codes, nothing for free. Nobody sent me the bumper, nobody gave me the lights. Everything you're about to see came straight out of my own pocket, and that's the whole point of this channel. I buy stuff, I install stuff, sometimes it works, and sometimes it turns into a complete pain in my ass. Either way, I'm going to show you what happened, what worked, what didn't, and what I learned along the way. That's exactly what this video is. So when I lifted my Bronco, this whole thing changed overnight. Bilstein 6112s, Icon UCAs, big 37-inch tires, you name it. It went from factory cute to something that looked more like a Tonka truck with an attitude. But that front end, it just wasn't working for me, man. I wanted to open up that front end, kind of like what my Jeep looks like. I wanted to see the suspension. I mean, I paid a lot of money for it. I wanted to see those 37-inch tires. And if I ever needed the approach angle, I wanted that too. So I went down the bumper rabbit hole. And if you've been around the channel, you've probably seen that video. I did hours of research, looked at dozens of options. Some I liked, some I didn't. Some were overpriced, but all of them had trade-offs. And eventually, I landed on this ADD bumper, even though my gut was telling me something else. But I went with what I thought was logical and what seemed to make sense at the time. Did I make a mistake? I don't know. So because this bumper's built around the rigid 360s, ADD basically made the choice for me for my main lights. I had to roll with it. Now, rigids are usually a little rich for my taste, but I scored a really good deal, which I highlighted in another video. But for the outer pods, I had free reign. I wasn't tied into anything specific as long as the dimensions were close. So for the outer pods, I went with black oak. I've had my eye on these black oaks for a very long time, so this gave me a perfect opportunity to finally pull the trigger. So now comes the first challenge, assembling the rigid lights. Now the lights did come with hardware, but what they didn't come with was any clear explanation on how that pieced together. So before I could go any further, I was on YouTube trying to sort out how the hell to put these brackets together. I mean, it's not like it was rocket science, but man, it would have saved me some time had they just explained it, which is not exactly how I pictured this project starting. So once I finally cracked that code, I had two options. I could either pull the light bracket out of the ADD bumper, mount the lights onto them, and install the light bracket again, or pull the trim bezel off, install the lights onto the bumper bracket with the bracket still installed. And at this point, I chose the lazy route. I mean, it was less hardware, less to disassemble, seemed like it would be faster, but it wasn't. Trying to position the lights, line up the brackets, and get everything perfect while the bracket was already mounted was a royal pain in the ass. But I'm never doing it again. Next time I'd pull the bracket. That's a tip for you. Next came the black oaks, and this is where it got interesting, because what could go wrong? I was confident they'd fit, but they didn't. And that's when I thought, shit, man, I really like these lights, and I had high hopes for them. So I did what I always do, set everything on the floor, and I just stared at it for a while. So maybe I could fabricate something. I don't know. And then it hit me. What if I flip the bracket? I mean, it's not in the instructions. Nothing says it's an option, but it's worth a shot, right? So I flipped it. The light sat lower. It gave me clearance. It fit. And remember, at this point, the bumper's not even on the Bronco yet. So I spent the next few days in the man cave trying to figure out how am I going to tackle this wiring project. I mean, not wiring, just thinking about wiring. Because the rigid lights didn't come with a harness. I mean, they give you a fucking pigtail. That's all. And the wire gauge? 18. It's not what I wanted to run on the rest of this truck. So for the bumper harness itself, I went 16 gauge. Then I had to decide how I wanted them to switch. I mean, all three of them together, or maybe the outer lights on one switch and the center light on another. And in my case, I went with the split setup. And I don't know why, because putting all three on one circuit would have been so much easier, but then it would have pushed me right up against that 15 amp limit on that aux2 switch, and I didn't want to flirt with that. So there I am on the floor in the man cave, or the boys club as I like to call it, because it's always Jax, Opie, and myself. I mean, you name it, it looked like a crime scene. And I'm sitting there staring at this bumper thinking, if this thing's designed around the rigid 360s, Why the hell didn't they give me some kind of wire channel? Or at least some way to secure the wiring harness? But nothing, not a single damn thing. Maybe it's not necessary. But if I'm gonna do it, I'm gonna do it right. So I ordered a cable clamp assortment kit off of Amazon. So my next idea was to jump into the Bronco, head down to Ace and get some self-tapping screws. I didn't want to drill into the bumper, but drilling into the light bracket, I could live with that. I mean, it's removable, it's replaceable, it's fair game in my opinion. Oh, and the rigid backlights? Those are on their own circuit. So there I was, soldering light to light, wrapping everything clean, sliding the outer netting over it, and shrinking it down, doing what felt like meticulous work. And that's when I realized I forgot what color went to which light. So I went out and grabbed the motorcycle charger, and then I started hitting each wire to see which light would fire up. Once I sorted it all out, I labeled everything. Then I moved on to the black oak, and those are easy because they came with a nice wiring harness. But I cut off the connectors to get rid of the bulk, soldered the wires directly, and merged both lights so I can connect them to the factory fog light circuit. So basically 2 hots, 1 ground, easy. At that point, I tied everything together neatly, and not difficult, but a shitload of work. And along the way, I managed to burn myself twice with the soldering iron. Of course I did. And now at this point, I knew one thing for sure. I had to make this bumper as easy as possible to install and remove. No cutting, no soldering, no having to redo all this shit again moments. I wanted a simple plug-in solution, something OEM-ish, not Amish, OEM-ish, something clean and something that didn't make me hate my life every time the bumper had to come off. So this is how I did it. First, the rigid lights. Those needed their own connector. So I grabbed the 4-wire Deutsch connector off of Amazon. Am I saying that right? Not Amazon, the other word. Anyways, they came in a pair. I only needed one, but whatever. I soldered the male connector onto the rigid light harness. Then I plugged the female end into it with the 4 pigtails. That's when I took my power supply again and I retested each circuit just to make sure nothing went wrong. Everything fired exactly how it should. And a little tip, always test your shit before you wrap it up. Saves you from that damn it moment later. So now on to the black oaks, which was a totally different story. In a previous video, I talked about using the factory fog light circuit to run those pods. And everything I found said it should work, even though the factory LEDs were 8 watts and the black oaks were 40 watts each. So yeah, this was a leap of faith. So when I pulled the factory fog connector off the factory bumper harness, I found something interesting. There were 3 wires instead of 2. 2 hots and 1 ground. That was promising. So I soldered the factory connector onto the black oak harness that I built. So now the black oaks will plug directly into the Bronco like they should. No wasted aux switch, no extra wiring, no bullshit. Using the resources I already have. And I wanted to save the aux switch for future upgrades because you never know. So why burn one on fogs if I didn't have to? And by this time I was done. Everything looked clean. I mean, it looked professionally manufactured clean. Not cobbled together, not a bunch of random wires with zip ties under the hood. Everything should plug together exactly the way I wanted. And after all the planning, soldering, testing, and second guessing myself, it felt pretty damn good to see it all finally come together. And the best part, if I ever have to pull this bumper off again, I unplugged 2 connectors and I'm done. And now came the wiring harness for the engine compartment. And this is the one that connects the aux switches to the bumper. So at first I tried to make life easy. I went onto Amazon and I was looking for a 4-conductor wire. But nothing was working. I mean, everything was garbage, even those so-called off-road wiring kits. They had cheap insulation, mystery meat copper, and nothing rated for the abuse of an engine compartment. So I said, screw it, I'll build my own. So I started searching for real automotive wire, not the fake shit, the GXL wire. And if you don't know, GXL is the real deal. It's oil resistant, abrasion resistant, heat resistant. It's designed for anything the Bronco's gonna throw at it. And this is the shit OEMs use. Pricey, but exactly what I needed. And this wire's legit, it holds up to heat. I tested it. Ask me how I know. So I bought their 12-pack, and each wire's about 10 foot long. I only needed 4, but this is the only way I could get 14-gauge wire in the color combination I needed. And while I was at it, I bought a 5-pack of X-Factory high-temp harness tape. Turned out I only needed a little over 1, so I pulled the 4 colors I needed, looped one end, zip-tied it, hung it on a plant hanger outside. The other end I attached to a cordless drill and I twisted the wires together. And you don't want to go too tight because you're not making data cable. You just want to bundle it enough to make it clean. And try not to over twist the wire, because it will try to untwist and bind when you release the tension. So with the wire hanging, I wrapped the entire length with that X-Factory tape, top to bottom. Then wrapped it in the opposite direction so everything overlapped and locked in. Not Amazon special, not good enough. Dogs. A real engine bay worthy harness, built to survive heat, vibration, anything the Bronco can throw at it. And when it came down to it, this thing turned out way better than anything I could have bought, and I highly recommend it. So now that the engine bay harness is built, it's time to route the damn thing. And that part actually turned out to be one of the cleanest wins of the whole build. So I started looking for a clean path. And I started on the driver's side where the original fog light circuit comes out, just trying to see how Ford routed there. But I didn't see a clean path, nothing that I could use. Then I looked at a straight shot behind some components. Tight squeezes, some angles, doable, but it would be sloppy. I didn't want my harness rubbing on shit or just hanging there. So I kept looking, and that's when I noticed this body structure. It's basically a painted channel just right of the radiator when you're facing the Bronco on the driver's side. It runs upwards, curves horizontal, and then follows behind the battery and fuse box, kind of like it was designed for a wiring harness. And I'm thinking, this is perfect. So I fed the wiring harness into the hole near the bottom and fed it through the channel. And it hung up once or twice, but nothing crazy. You just have to gently work it through. And it just so happened there was another hole between the battery and the fuse block. Perfect exit point. So I grabbed my spring-loaded claw, grabbed the harness, and pulled it through clean. Then I worked that slack back and forth so I just had enough at the bumper end. I didn't want a coil of wire just hanging there. And from there I routed it behind the fuse box where it landed perfectly right next to the aux switch wiring. Kind of like Ford left that spot open just for me. But I did have a concern because both holes had metal edges and I was afraid it might vibrate and chew through the wire over time. So I needed a solution. So I grabbed a spare shock bushing that I had, I cut a slit so it would fit over the wiring, beveled the edges and cut a groove around the outside diameter. Added a little grease, pressed it into the hole. And it popped in like it was made for it. Solid, not going anywhere. That's Project Kehm. For the second hole, right next to the fuse box, I just used a simple grommet. And at this point, this is where I realized I had way more harness than I needed. I didn't want to cut anything yet, and I didn't want to solder it to the aux switches yet either. I wanted to wait until the bumper was installed and plugged in so I could see exactly how much length I needed before making anything permanent. And that was the smartest move I made all day. Alright, now let's talk about the ADD hardware, because holy shit, this one needs its own section. My first impression wasn't great. They use U-clips and small bolts. Not what you expect from a premium bumper. And maybe it's fine and maybe it'd last forever, but I'm not going to take that chance. The factory bumper utilized M12. Why would you go anything less? So this is where I went full Project Kehm to figure out how I can make this thing better. But here's the problem. This bumper mounts from the rear and there's zero access to hold that nut while you're tightening that bolt. So I'm looking at the factory Ford hardware. Those beefy M12 bolts, those factory nut plates. I'm thinking this is what I need. But how do I make it work? Because the stock bolts are a little too long. So back to Ace I went to buy shorter M12 bolts. But I didn't go without a plan because I wanted to use the Lobo brace hardware. It's stout. But Lobo designed this for a front mount bumper. Basically that's held on the backside by that little retaining nut that holds the factory stock bracket. So I had to figure out a way to keep that attached to the bumper on the opposite side. And that's when it dawned on me, Gorilla Tape. So I'm thinking, all right, I got a good plan, problem solved. I put the tape on, I attached the bracket to the bumper and one of the nuts fall out. Tested another one and another fell out. And I realized this isn't a good plan because what happens if that bracket falls off? I mean, it acts like a wrench, it's what holds the nut. If it comes loose after you've installed it, you're screwed. Nothing to hold it while you're wrenching. So I ditched that idea and went with the next plan. I used the factory nut plates. And these were different because the nuts are actually welded to that plate. So I cut them in half, ground them down, painted them so they wouldn't rust, and taped them in place. And that's when it was time to try the idea. So we lifted the bumper, but it wouldn't fit. Fought it for about 5 minutes, and that's when I realized I forgot to remove that black sensor housing box. And since mine was empty, I just pulled it off and tossed it. And that's when everything aligned, so I put my plan in action, started threading one of the bolts. Wasn't working. Kept pushing the bracket to one side, or pushing it back, or completely falling out. So down came the bumper, retaped, lifted it back up, tried it again, and it failed over and over. And at this point, my frustration was rising, but I didn't want to let that U-clip beat me. And that's when I noticed that those nut plates weren't sitting flat. They were kind of rocking in place. Because I know this tape is stronger than that. So I rotated the plates 180 degrees, and that made a difference because of one of the beveled edges. Long story, but anyways, now the plate sits flat, and the tape holds strong. So we tried it again. And this time, we kept the bumper slightly pulled out so I could see where I was threading. And bam, first bolt in. Then the second, then the third, and so on. And I'm rocking at this point up until bolt number 6, the last one. And that's when that last bolt said, fuck you, John. The plate fell off. Lucky it came out, but there was no way in hell I was getting that back in. And I'm not gonna take the bumper off. So I loosened the bolts somewhat and made enough of a gap to slide that U-clip in. And it worked. So in the end, 5 bolts upgraded, 1 ADD special. Did I need to go this route in the first place? I wouldn't have felt good about it if I didn't. So 5 out of 6, I'll take that win. And if you're running the Lobo brace kit with this bumper, Get ready, because that installation's a bitch. You can't get your hands in there to turn that screw. So you're gonna have a lot of patience, a long extension, and a swivel. So after I got all the bolts in loosely, first thing I did was plug everything up. And all the connectors lined up perfectly. The factory fog light connector clicked right in. And this is the moment of truth. I opened the door, hit the fog light switch, and it worked. All the research, all the second guessing, all that, I wonder if these black oaks will work on the fog light circuit, it worked flawlessly. And that was a huge win, one of the only things that went right. So I'm tightening up the bolts. I leveled everything up, and that's when my wife walks up to the Bronco and says, and I'm still under the Bronco. And I told her I can't take any more bad news. Unless something's on fire, don't tell me. So she didn't. And that was worse. So I finished up, I cleaned up, turned around to admire the bumper, and that's when my stomach dropped. Driver's side was about ½ inch lower than the passenger side. And I know I leveled it twice. But there it was, crooked enough that once you see it, you can't unsee it. And what really pissed me off, I spent 3.5 hours installing this thing. So I threw in the towel, showered, had a drink, sat on the couch, and thought, I gotta fix this. So all night long I was tossing and turning, knowing I had to tackle this thing first thing in the morning. So next morning, first thing, I'm back outside going at it again. And I gotta tell you, loosening the bolts isn't easy. It's a bitch. You gotta have raccoon hands to get in there. But I loosened the bolts just enough to level the bumper. Pull the passenger side up, the driver's side goes down. Pull the driver's side up, the passenger side goes down, like a fucking teeter-totter. So I got my hydraulic jack, lifted the passenger side, pulled up on the driver's side, tightened the bolts, got out from under the Bronco, stepped back and said, finally level. Then I removed the jack, fucking passenger side drops again. But this time only about 1/8 of an inch. And at this point, I made a decision. I've invested enough time, enough energy, and enough sanity. I was done. I wasn't winning the battle of perfection. It was close, it was good, time to move on. Oh yeah, and somewhere in the middle of all this, I dropped the ratchet on my face and gave myself a fat lip. Because apparently this project wasn't done kicking my ass yet. The final wiring went smooth, and after everything else I dealt with on this project felt like a damn miracle. First thing I did was cut the harness down to length. I removed about 5 foot. So I started by leaving the ground wire a little bit longer because I wanted to reach a grounding point right next to the hood gasket area. Then I started wiring everything in. Red wire to aux2, which is the green-brown 15 amp circuit. Next up was the blue wire to aux3, which was the violet-green 10 amp circuit. Then the last one, the white wire to aux4, which is the brown wire 10 amp circuit. And this, I gotta admit, it was overkill for the backlights. But I figured, what the heck? And I can always remove it later if I want to use it somewhere else. Then I connected the black wire to the ground point, hit the aux2 switch, the outer lights worked. Tested aux3, middle light came on. Then I hit the aux4 switch, and it worked. So at this point, every circuit worked. And once everything tested out, I wrapped the remaining of the wire with the same high temp tape. Then I inspected the whole thing from the bumper to the firewall. Every connection, every clamp, every inch of wire. Everything. That's Project Kehm at its best. So I wanted to give this a little time before I filmed this part because I wanted to let the frustration settle and give you guys an honest take. You might look at this bumper and think it's awesome. I don't. And I thought once I got past the install, I'd feel a little different about it, but it's been a few weeks now, and I just don't. I'm not on the fence anymore. I just don't like the bumper on my Bronco. Now, it doesn't mean this is a bad bumper. It's clean, it's got great approach angles, it does what it's supposed to do. It just wasn't the right bumper for me, and I should have listened to my gut. But if you're thinking about buying one of these, I hope it helped, because this is the video I wish I had before I started this project. And if it saves you time, Amazon orders, trips to the hardware store, and maybe even a fat lip, then it was worth it. I'm John, and this is Project Kehm.